In this movie, we're going to take a look at the align and rotate commands. These are two really useful and powerful modification commands that allow us to reposition objects based on rotations or their relationships to other nearby geometry. So I'm in a file called alignrotate, and down here in the lower corner, I have a small office building. And up here, this odd shape is actually a site plan file that's linked in to the project file here. Now, we're in the level 1 floor plan, and we can get a much better look if we change to the site plan view. So I'm going to double-click site plan, and now it becomes a little bit more evident what I'm actually looking at. Here is my linked site file. It's got some roads and sidewalks. It's got a parking lot and a property line. And if you look right here at the end of this sidewalk, there's like a little green dot right there, and I'm going to zoom in on that. And that little green dot is actually a small green line. That's where the front door is of the building. So I'm going to use that green line for reference to get this site plan positioned relative to the building down here. So let me zoom in on the building. And so you can see that we're just looking down on the building right now. We're seeing the roofs, but we can't really tell where that front door is. So temporarily, I'm going to take this view, and using the visual style pop-up right here, the default is hidden line, which is typically what we want. I'm going to change that to wireframe, and the drawing gets a little busier, but in this case, that will help me identify where the door is. You'll notice if I zoom in over here that there's a wall right here and these lines right here. That's where the front door is. So we want that green line to kind of line up in that general location. So let me zoom out again using Zoom Previous. And to get started, I'm going to take this file and I'm just simply going to drag it and get it close by. So that's really the first step. And the reason I want to do it that way is it's going to be a lot easier to make the modification without having to constantly zoom in and out. So if I just get it in the general ballpark, and then I can fine tune it. Now I've still got the file selected, and I'll start with the rotate command. So I'm going to click on that or type RO, which is the shortcut for that command. Now, on the options bar, there's a few ways we could rotate. We can either just type in an angle. So if I happen to know that it needed to rotate 10 degrees, I could simply type that in. The trouble with that is you'll see that it rotated just fine, but 10 degrees wasn't the right amount. I don't really know what the right amount should be. And you can see that it's sort of rotated around what seems like an arbitrary point. Well, if I click the rotate command again to start the command, you kind of see something's happening off screen here. Let me just pan a little bit and show you there's this little blue dot right here. Now, if I roll my wheel and zoom all the way out, that little blue dot is actually at the center of this imaginary box which surrounds the object that we have selected. So that center point is not at a terribly convenient point for rotation right now. So let me zoom back in, and we can actually change where this center point is located. So I'm just going to click on the little blue dot right here, and I'll zoom in a little closer at the end of the sidewalk, and I'm going to snap it right to the end point of that green line. Once I have the center point right there, I now have a lot more control. I'm going to take the starting angle and make it snap to the other end of that line, and now I'm rotating off of that known edge there. And so now I have a lot more control. And notice that if I move this up to a horizontal, it will automatically snap to a horizontal and figure out what the rotation should be. And I'll just simply click, and you'll see that it will snap that entire file to a nice horizontal and vertical orientation. At this point, all I would have to do is just move it from the midpoint here to the midpoint of that door. Now, that's certainly one way that we could do the rotation. I'm actually going to undo that, zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to show you the align method next. So there's nothing wrong with the rotate method. You can certainly do that, and that was one of our options. The other option is to go to the Modify tab and use my align command. AL is the shortcut for that. So the way the align command works is you highlight some reference on your screen that you want to use as the reference point, and then you click a second object, and that second object will move and rotate into position relative to the first. So in this case, I want my reference point to be, I'm using my tab key, and I'm tabbing until I get the face of this wall. I want my reference point to be the face of this wall right here. And you'll see it'll highlight that edge all the way across the screen. Now Revit wants me to select the entity that I want to move and position into alignment with that edge. And I'll click on this green line right here, And the nice thing about that technique is it moves and rotates in one step. Now, I still have to fine-tune the position, so you might argue that it's still 2 steps either way, and that's why I said we can really do this either way, but I can go from midpoint to midpoint, and now my sidewalk is positioned exactly at the front door. I zoom back out, I set back to hidden line, and I'm not quite done yet because if you deselect, you'll notice that something happened to the building. And what actually happened to the building was, if I go to one of my elevation views, like the south elevation, we can see that the linked file is actually inserted too high. It's floating up above the building. So what happened to my building was we buried it. So here's another place where we can use our align command. If I zoom and show you, the linked site file actually has a level here called project level, and you can see that relative to the site file, that's at 56 feet. So the 56 feet in the site file should match 0 in my current file. In other words, this site file needs to move down 56 feet. So my 2 methods that I could use to do that would be to use the move command and just move it down 56 feet, or I'm going to use the align command again for this. Click on align, highlight level 1 as my alignment reference, and then highlight this level here in the linked file, and you'll see that'll pull the site plan down. Cancel out of the command. I'm going to go to the 3D view, zoom in, and we now have our building positioned nicely relative to the site. So align and rotate give us 2 different methods that we can use to do overall positioning, like what we've done here with our site plan. You'll find yourself using these commands all the time for various purposes. These were just examples that I've given you here. With the align tool, you use a reference and then move the other object into position with that reference. And with the rotate tool, you can either type in an angle that you want to rotate, or you can use points on screen to indicate the rotation.